Hi, welcome back to Power of the Programmer. This is section 3.3, Conditionals. By now, we should have covered variables, understanding that they're basically labels for your data, as well as loops, covering two kinds of loops, the for loop and the while loop. So in this section, we're going to be covering conditionals. So if you are following along, you can actually go ahead and open the conditionals.py file in the section 3 folder in the learning examples from the website. And over here, I prepared a couple examples of conditionals. And to start out, the formal definition of a conditional is the ability to test a variable against a value and act in one way if the condition is met by the variable, or another way if not. Another word for them are if statements, and they are very useful in programming. You can see them in real life as making decisions. So for example, if I finish my work by 6, then I'll go to happy hour. That's conditional. If work is done, then go to happy hour. Otherwise, finish working or go home. Another example would be, if my girlfriend comes over, then go to dinner. The conditional is if my girlfriend comes over, and then if it's true, then go to dinner. Otherwise, I don't know what you do, but I usually just chill. And in programming, this is also very true. So in the conditionals folder, in the conditionals file, I wrote out a couple conditionals, and in this example, we're going to be counting the days in a year. And then let's say that in this example, I use 185. I believe that is in June, around June or July. So let's say like our birthday is July 15th. This might not be true. You're gonna have to double check my math here, but for the sake of this example, let's say it's true. So we're modeling the year as 365 days. So let's go ahead and create days is 0 as a data holder. So this is now representing the day. And we have a while loop because days always go, time never stops for anyone. So we keep on iterating the days. So in every day, let's say we increase the days by 1. So this is a day timer. Basically, this is like you run this loop once a day when you wake up. So every day is increasing. And now we want to say if the day is 185, which is my birthday, then we say happy birthday. So I'm using a modulo in this example, which a modulo is basically saying divide this out and take the remainder. So I'll show you what this means in the Python interpreter on this side. Make this a little bit bigger. So let's say print 5 modulo 3. What do you think this is? If you're right, then if you're right on the understanding that this is the remainder on the division, which basically means like if you have the number 7 and you want to find the modulo of 4, then you want to divide it until you can't divide it anymore by 4, and then find the remainder after that, which in this case would be 3, because you can put 1 4 into that, remove the 4 from the 7, then you have 3, and that's the remainder. So in this case, following that logic, the modulo of 5 into 3, or 5 modulo 3 should be 2. So if you think it's 2, then you're right. I'm going to give you a second to think, and then I'm going to run this command. If you don't think it's 2, then I'm going to run this command and do the math and explain why. So boom, it's 2. So in this case, to do the modulo command, the logic is 5 minus, if 5 modulo 3 is equal to 5 minus 3, and then check if you can minus 3 again without letting it go negative. So 2 minus 3 is -1. So you can't do another division here. So you remove this, and then 2 is a modulo. Another example is 20 modulo 7. So in this case, we minus 9, and this becomes 11. So we can minus 9 again, and it'll be 2. We minus 9 again, it becomes -7. So we can't do this last modulo, so it becomes 2. And then we can do a print modulo 9, which is 2 in the Python interpreter. So that logic is right. This is useful for finding the remainders, sort of if you have in sales. This is very useful for figuring out like how much of a surplus you have. For example, if you want to buy like a certain amount of units and you have $1,000 and every unit costs $90, you can do something like this. Open up Python, and then you can figure out how much is over. So you're 10 over, so you can find out that 990 is the max number of units you can buy, which is 11 units. So that's like a nice quick way of doing it. If you are clever, you could also say this, which is, since this is an integer, integers always round down. So 11.1111 is another way of saying it. So you have 11 units and you have a little bit left over. The modulo is just a nicer way of doing it. So in this case, we're using it to have the days, because the days will always go over, because a day on January 2nd is on the computer will be represented as 366, whereas that's not easy to interpret using like a birthday counter. So we're using a modulo in this case to sort of round off the extra and then set each day as a new, every year as a new, start every year beginning with 0. So this logic is a little bit complicated, but that is the thought process behind that. And little tricks like this is going to be useful in your business and automation, because a lot of times in real life, things are repetitions of each other. Every day is a repetition of the day before. Every week is a repetition of the week before. So rounding off the week, Monday next week would be 8. If you modulo by 7, then becomes 1, which is the first day of the week. So that's another example of this. But enough of that. Let's go on back to the conditionals. That little tangent is because I believe this modulo is very important to business applications. So let's go ahead and run this conditional program. So it looks like I didn't finish this code. I was looking at this code. So if the days modulo 365, so we always start the year at 0, is plus 1 is 385, because we want to start the day in January, because remember, computers always start counting at 0. So if that's true, then print happy birthday, and then we'll just print the day. Day is and then let's just break this, because it will continue forever if the days is greater than 1,000. So comment this out and run this. You can see that there is an issue, line 37, because I'm using emojis, because I am a very festive guy. So there we go, and then days, perfect. So as you can see, it counted on 184, plus 1 is 185, because computers start counting at 0. And then it also counted for 346, and 914, which counts 3 years into the future. So if we modulo this by 365, it will count it on the 184th day again, and then we can add 1 to even it out and fix the gap. So you can see that I counted it 3 times using this modulo, and this birthday counter is correct. So that's a couple examples of an if statement. In this if statement, I counted the birthday. So this conditional is if the day is July 15th, in this, let's just say 185 is July 15th, then say happy birthday. And then there's another conditional, let's break this loop and only count 3 years into the future. So this ends the loop because otherwise a while true is always true and this loop will continue forever. If we didn't have this, this counter would continue forever. And let's take out the modulo to show you how it's always increasing. So you can see that it keeps on going until you tell it to stop, which isn't very useful. So let's move on and show another example of a loop. So in this case, an if statement is really all you need, but it is very frustrating to only write that. So sometimes you want an if else. Like for example, if you're going to the gym and you go at 6. So and if you miss it, then you wait until the next day and you eat dinner. So let's say you check the clock and it says like if it's 6 o'clock, then go to the gym. Otherwise, eat dinner. So if time is 6, go to the gym. Else, eat dinner. So this is an example of an if-else statement. So in this case, I already have a loop written for you, and this is all in the conditionals.py. There's no separate file, but continue the birthday example. We're going to be adding an if-else statement if it's a new year. So if it's a new year, which 365, by the day modulo 365, remember the 365 evens it out, is 0. This way we always start the year at 0. Say Happy New Year. Otherwise say Happy New Day. So in this case, let's also add a break statement because we don't want this looping forever. So if days is greater than 1,000, then we break this. Break basically just breaks out of a loop. So we run this conditionals again, and it should say Happy New Day a lot of times. So you can see here, Happy New Day. Now let's just say we will, because this is not very useful, we say else, add another if statement. If we only say this maybe twice, let's say on the 190th day, we say Happy New Day. This way, it should only print Happy New Day 3 times, and as you can see, that is true. So this is an example of an else if, an if else. In Python, we can actually use an elif, which is a simplified version of saying else if. So actually, let's go back to this example and break this down into an elif and run it again. So you can see the exact same thing printed out. So this is an example of an if and an if else statement. The if is a conditional that basically says if this is true, then run this snippet of code. The else basically says if that is not true, then run this snippet of code. And then the elif is adding a conditional, because if you don't add the other if, then it will always run the else, even if the else is not very useful. So let's say like let's say the else is happy happy spaghetti day. I don't know. I also misspelled spaghetti. There we go. I think that's right. Yeah, something like that. So you can see here the else statement is always running, even if the if is not really related to what the if is. So be very careful with the else, because the if is only true once or twice, but the else will always run. If you don't intend to run the else every time, then it might make more sense to use an elif for your code. But overall, that covers conditionals. And moving on to the next section, we're going to be covering functions.